All right. Hello, good people, and welcome. Today, I am going to finish up the video on colorism. This one is going to be about how it impacts our esteem. And because this channel is dedicated to women of color and practical techniques to wellness, I am going to focus on the self-esteem of women of color, specifically Black women, and the importance of us having this clear discussion about colorism and how it does have an impact on our self-image. And so I wanted to start off by just kind of giving some points that I learned over research and just in general that I think that we kind of don't want to discuss, but we've all know it's happening. Some of the main factors that I found in the studies that I read were that historically, the perception of women with lighter complexions are obviously seen as more attractive to men. We still have a high prevalence of both light and dark skin feeling as if there is a level of discrimination towards them. They also found that there was a high correlation between body satisfaction and the tone of your skin. That darker skinned Black women tend to have more problems with self-worth and self-confidence. They actually expect it to be judged more according to their skin tone, and as well as darker skinned women are viewed as more negative and have an expectation that they will be perceived that way, which ultimately tells us that there is something going on in our community surrounding colorism, when we can actually have entire groups feel that they are going to be perceived as not attractive, not beautiful. And as a result, it impacts their self-worth and self-confidence. And so instead of me giving you reasons why it should, what I did was I actually went and I researched it and looked at it and said, hey, what studies say? What do studies say? And the reason I did that was because I feel like this is such an emotional topic for many people that they don't look at what's really happening. And so I wanted to start with what the studies may have shown. And I'll link some of the studies down that I saw down in the actual description. And also I'll link last week's video for just the historical context of colorism in this country. I'll link it down as well. But what I wanted to talk about today is how it impacts our self-esteem. And so when it comes down to it, colorism impacts our self-esteem in so many layers. I think there is a level of discussion that needs to be surrounding how we see our features, our lips, our hips, our thighs, our abilities to represent what is more African-based features and celebrate them in our wholeness of our different complexions. And I think we have to, as a community, start to discuss the fact that when there is a correlation between our skin tone and our body self-satisfaction, that speaks to the reality that we have a disregard for certain features. And we have for years put in place that certain features are better than others. And as a result, it is impacting our children. And so I wanted to start off with that first. Now I'm just going to make it plain. The impact that it is having on us as women, the impact that it is having on us as a community is that it is limiting us to really nurture and love all of who we are. And as a result, our children are impacted, our families are impacted. The esteem of young women that I work with who are of different complexions have very clear issues surrounding if they're fair skinned or dark skinned or lighter skinned or darker skinned. And as a result, it's how they perceive their beauty. And also the family perspective of beauty is also very clear. And so I'm saying this because I do work with a lot of adolescents who don't feel that their complexion is celebrated because they are the darker child within their group. They are the child who doesn't, quote unquote, look as beautiful as their mom or their dad, depending on which one is the lighter skinned person. And also the texture of hair becomes a really still a very clear issue within our community regarding what is considered beautiful or not. And although, yes, we are celebrating natural hair, there is also a celebration of certain textures of natural hair. And as a result, even when I'm working with my babies being younger adolescents and children who are women, who are people of color, because they're not all female. And even having my young men tell me things or say things like, I only date uh, Puerto Rican or Dominicans, or I only date Latinx because they get me better. When it really comes down to is how they're perceiving their the skin tone and or complexion of that individual, because nothing about the women that they present indicate that they are better, doing a better selection because of a solid attitude change or shift in the human being, because these young men are just still dating girls who are reckless and not healthy. They just don't come from the Black race. And I think I have no issue with dating outside of your race, but when you are doing it as a result of colorism, as a result of a disdain for a complexion or a group of people because of their complexion, that is an issue. And that also tells me that the esteem of not only our men or women are impacted, but our men are impacted, because the selection of mates doesn't always have to do with gender. It does have to do with how we see the individual tone and also the confidence of that person within that tone. And so if you ask me, does colorism impact our self-esteem? Yes. If you think it doesn't, that's fine. However, the world shows differently, and the impact and the desire to only celebrate certain complexions and textures of hair related to what you assume is more like that texture or white supremacy in itself. When it comes down to it, we are more likely to celebrate what is closer to white in all fashions and features than we are to celebrate that which is African. And so it becomes really important for us to acknowledge that, yes, we do have, it does impact self-esteem, and it is our responsibility to do something different. So I want to close this video not with, does it impact self-esteem or not? Or does it impact our community or not? Even if you don't agree with me, these are some of the things that I believe can be done to make sure that we are celebrating all of who we are when we're talking and discussing with our kids. I think that we need to reflect more images of beauty from all tones and complexions, all body shapes, from brown, from lights to dark skin, but also brown tones in between. I think it's very important for us to do the same thing with features, to celebrate the textures of different types of hairstyles, to celebrate the textures. And, it's so funny because I'm always having this discussion about how I don't know what texture or what number my hair is for a reason. And part of the reason is that I celebrate the fact that I have a strong history of people who have loved me and survived multiple layers of abuse in this country. And so the texture of my hair and knowing a number doesn't indicate if I'm going to be able to be a beautiful person or not. So I don't care if it means that I can get some different products or not. I'll figure it out along the way. But celebrating a number or celebrating a texture is more about celebrating an image that, to me, represents more of a European-based look. And so it becomes extremely important that even within natural movements, complexion-based movements, that we celebrate all of us and acknowledge that there is colorism that has impacted darker-skinned women more heavily than it has impacted any other group. And it would fail us as a people, similar to how as a country we don't acknowledge racism, for us not to actually acknowledge the layers in which colorism has impacted our community and our people and our children. Because I don't want any of my sisters, regardless of complexion, to feel less loved, less appreciated, and less comforted by all of us if it's going to come down to a tone issue that we're not willing to acknowledge because it puts us in a position of privilege or power. That in itself, to me, is ridiculous and nonsense. And it becomes extremely important as we nurture our younger generation to start to acknowledge all of these things out loud so that we can celebrate multiple complexions from all directions, from lighter to darker, from to darker to lighter, from all directions, that we celebrate each other, and we celebrate it by reflecting it in everything we do, in our images on our television, in our images in our magazines, on our images in videos, in our images in our sons' lives, right? Our children and our daughters are one thing, but our sons also deserve to see that we celebrate the women of all shades and not just one look. I can go on and on my soapbox. So my main way to help deal with self-esteem on this layer of level is to have a discussion, acknowledge that there is an issue, and start to celebrate the multi-layers of our beauty as women of color, and the impact of celebrating all of those shades and all of those layers of beauty will have impacts on generations to come. All right, I hope that that made sense. This video is not as long as the other one for a reason. I just wanted to make it clear that there's historical reference to why colorism exists, but the impact on our self-esteem currently is important for us to acknowledge, and we need to do something about it by celebrating all of who we are and moving forward. No, it's not idealistic to think that way. It's actually productive to start making moves that way. All right, I hope that makes sense. You guys be well.